Item 431. Pneumatically placed concrete. 1. Description. Furnish and place pneumatically applied concrete for the construction of portions of structures, repairing concrete structures, encasement of structural steel members, lining ditches and tunnels, soil nail walls, retaining walls, and other work as shown on the plans or as directed. 2. Materials. Provide pre-bagged concrete materials for concrete structure repair and class of concrete shown on the plans for other work unless otherwise shown on the plans. Submit pre-bagged materials information for approval. Material testing may be required before approval and installation test panels will be required in accordance with Section 431.2.4, Proportioning and Mixing. Provide materials in accordance with the pertinent requirements of the following items with the exceptions noted in Section 431.2.1, exceptions to Item 421, hydraulic cement concrete, Section 431.2.2, exceptions to Item 440, reinforcement for concrete, and Section 431.2.3, exception to DMS 6310, joint sealants and fillers. Item 420, concrete substructures. Item 421, hydraulic cement concrete. Item 440, reinforcement for concrete. DMS 4655, concrete repair materials. DMS 6310, joint sealants and fillers. 2.1 Exceptions to Item 421, hydraulic cement concrete. Provide a fine aggregate that meets the requirements of Item 421, hydraulic cement concrete, Table 6, Grade 1, and a coarse aggregate that meets the requirements of Item 421, hydraulic cement concrete, Table 4, Grade 7, unless otherwise noted on the plans. 2.2 Exceptions to Item 440, reinforcement for concrete. Provide mushroom-headed steel anchors or expansion anchor hook bolts with a minimum diameter of 1/8 inches and a minimum length of 2 inches to attach reinforcement for the repair of concrete structures as shown on the plans or as directed. Reinforcing steel may be either welded wire fabric or reinforcing bars unless otherwise shown on the plans. 2.3 Exception to DMS 6310, joint sealants and fillers. Provide a preformed bituminous fiber material unless otherwise noted on the plans. 2.4 Proportioning and Mixing. Submit for approval a proposed mix design conforming to the basic mix design requirements provided in Table 1 unless otherwise shown on the plans. Table 1. Classes of concrete. See table in specifications. 1 More cement may be used when approved. 2 Higher minimum strengths may be specified. Measure the cement and aggregates by volume and mix with enough water to achieve the desired consistency. Use as little water as possible to achieve sufficient adhesion. Mix concrete sufficiently dry so it will not sag or fall from vertical or inclined surfaces or separate in horizontal work. Prepare test panels using the same air pressure, nozzle tip, and position to be used for the production work to verify the mix design before approval. Apply a 3 inches layer of concrete to a plywood sheet with minimum dimensions of 18 inches x 18 inches for each test panel. Cure the test panels in the same manner as the proposed work. Take 3 cores, each 2 inches in diameter, out of each test panel and test in compression at 7 days in accordance with TEX 424A. The mix design will be approved when the average strength of the 3 cores conforms to the strengths shown in Table 1. Provide additional test panels as directed if there are any changes in materials, equipment, or nozzle operator during the work. 3. Construction. 3.1 Qualification. Provide experienced personnel able to produce concrete satisfying plan requirements and of uniform quality as required. Provide documentation of nozzle operators' qualification for the process proposed and orientation of the application meeting the minimum requirements when shown on the plans. Demonstrate nozzle operators' abilities by constructing test panels before commencement of work. Orient test panels to match application direction of placement. Include reinforcing steel in the test panel with similar spacing as in member. Qualification test panels may be used for mix verification in accordance with Section 431.2.4, proportioning and mixing. 3.2 Surface preparation. Grade the area of proposed work accurately to the elevation and dimensions shown on the plans when concrete is to be placed against soil. Compact with sufficient moisture to provide a firm foundation and to prevent absorption of water from the concrete but without free surface moisture. Remove paint, rust, loose mill scale, grease or oil, and all other foreign materials that may reduce the bond of the concrete to the steel when concrete is used to encase structural steel members. Remove all deteriorated or loose material by chipping with pneumatic, electric, or hand tools when concrete is placed against concrete or rock. Cut square or slightly undercut shoulders approximately 1 inches deep along the perimeter of repair areas. Sandblast the surface to clean all rust from exposed reinforcing steel and to produce a clean rough textured surface on the concrete or rock. Wet the surface against which the concrete will be placed for at least 1 hour with potable water. Place the concrete when the surface has dried to a saturated surface dry, SSD, condition. Achieve SSD conditions by high-pressure water blasting 15 to 30 minutes before placing the repair material, soaking a minimum of 12 hours, or by other approved methods. An SSD condition is achieved when the surface remains damp when exposed to sunlight for 15 minutes. Provide joints, side forms, headers, and shooting strips for backing or paneling. Use ground or gauging wires where necessary to establish thickness, surface planes, and finish lines. 3.3 Reinforcement. Place and secure reinforcement to ensure there is no displacement from impact of applying pneumatically placed concrete. Place reinforcing bars at a spacing not less than 2.5 inches. Support reinforcing wire fabric or bars using mushroom-headed anchors, expansion hook bolts, or grouted rebar capable of resisting a pull-out force of 2,500 pounds. Space anchors no more than 12 inches center to center on overhead surfaces, 18 inches center to center on vertical surfaces, and 36 inches center to center on top horizontal surfaces. Use at least 3 anchors in each individual patch area. Do not use explosive force to shoot anchors into concrete. Check the resistance to pull out of the reinforcing anchors when directed. Notify the engineer before installation of the anchors. Locate anchors so there is no damage to press-dressing tendons or conduits embedded in the concrete. Use reinforcement when performing repair work in all areas where the thickness of the concrete will exceed 1.5 inches. Use a single layer of either 2x2, W1.2 x W1.2 or 3 x 3 W1.5 x W1.5 of welded wire fabric, or approved equivalent, unless noted otherwise on the plans. Use a single layer of wire fabric to reinforce each 4 inches thickness of patch or fractional part in areas where the concrete thickness exceeds 4 inches. Encase completely each layer of wire fabric in concrete that has taken its initial set before installing the succeeding layer of wire fabric. Place the reinforcing fabric parallel to the finished surface, and support it so it will be at least 3/4 inches out from the surface to be covered. Provide at least 1 inch's clearance between the finished concrete surface and all steel items including anchors, reinforcing bars, and wire fabric. Lap adjacent fabric sheets at least 6 inches and tie together securely at a spacing of no more than 18 inches. Pre-bend fabric before installing to fit around corners and into reentrant angles. Pre-bend the welded wire fabric for encasement of steel members using a template to conform as nearly as possible to the outlines of the members to be encased. Drill holes between 1/2 and 1 inches in diameter in the webs of the members as close as possible to the flanges to allow for attachment of the reinforcing fabric. Space these holes at approximately 3 feet on center. Use 3/8 inches diameter rods placed through these holes to secure the reinforcing fabric. Hold the reinforcing fabric at least 3/4 inches out from the surface of the steel member. Lap adjacent fabric sheets at least 6 inches and tie together at a spacing of no more than 12 inches. 3.4 Pneumatic placement of concrete. Pneumatically applied concrete can be either dry mix or wet mix. The dry mix process consists of dry mixed fine aggregate and hydraulic cement to which water is added immediately before its pneumatic expulsion from a nozzle. The wet mix process consists of mechanically pre-mixed concrete pneumatically applied through a nozzle. 3.4.1 General. Place the concrete when the ambient temperature is above 35 degrees Fahrenheit and rising and material temperature is between 50 degrees Fahrenheit and 90 degrees Fahrenheit for wet mix and below 100 degrees Fahrenheit for dry mix. Do not place concrete against a surface containing frost, ice, or standing water. Protect concrete from freezing or quick drying after placement. Apply the concrete using pneumatic equipment that sprays the mix onto the prepared surface at a velocity less than 100 feet per second for construction of portions of structures, repairing concrete structures, or encasement of structural steel members. Minimize rebound and produce a compacted dense homogeneous mass. Do not apply concrete if high winds will prevent proper application or if rain could wash out the concrete. Hold the nozzle approximately 2 to 4 feet from the surface and position it so the concrete impinges nearly at right angles to the surface being covered. Use shooting strips to ensure straight lines, square corners, and a plain surface of concrete. Place to keep the trapping of rebound to a minimum. Slope the concrete off to a thin edge at the end of each day's work or at similar stopping periods requiring construction joint. Thoroughly clean and wet previously placed concrete before placing an adjacent or additional section. Apply a sufficient number of coats to obtain the required thickness. Place coats on vertical and overhead surfaces in layers of such thickness to prevent sloughing, sagging, tearing, or debonding. Provide a sufficient interval between successive layers in sloping, vertical, or overhead work to allow initial but not final set. Clean the surface to remove the thin film of lands to provide for a bond with succeeding applications. Remove rebound and accumulated loose sand from the surface to be covered before placing of the original or succeeding layers of concrete. Correct any sags or other defects to the proper section as directed. Place concrete to completely encase reinforcing steel. Encase reinforcing steel by shooting with sufficient velocity and plasticity that material flows around and behind reinforcement. Apply the concrete using either the wet mix or dry mix process unless otherwise noted on the plans. Mix the materials thoroughly and uniformly using a paddle or drum type mixer designed for pneumatic application. Wet mix process applications can use transit mix concrete. Do not use the wet mix process for repair of damaged concrete. Clean mixing and placing equipment at regular intervals. Inspect the nozzle liner and water and air injection system daily, replace worn parts as necessary. Do not reuse rebound or overspray concrete. 3.4.2 Dry mix process. Use a compressor or blower capable of delivering a sufficient volume of oil-free air at the pressure shown in Table 2. Maintain steady pressure throughout the placing process. Use a water pump with the size and capacity to deliver water to the nozzle with a pressure at least 15 psi more than the required air pressure. The values shown in Table 2 are based on a hose length of 150 feet with the nozzle less than 25 feet above the delivery equipment. Increase operating pressure approximately 5 psi for each additional 50 feet of hose and approximately 5 psi for each 25 feet the nozzle is raised. Table 2. Compressor capacities. See table in specifications. 3.4.3 Wet mix process. Operate the pump at a line pressure between 100 psi and 300 psi. Use delivery hoses between 1.5 inches and 3 inches in diameter. Use mixing equipment capable of thoroughly mixing the materials in sufficient quantity to maintain continuous placement. 3.5 Construction joints. Use a square butt joint where the joint is subject to compressive stress or is over existing construction joints unless noted otherwise on the plans. Use tapered or square butt joints at other locations. Square the outside 1 inches of tapered joints perpendicular to the surface. 3.6 Finish. Use a sharp trowel to cut off all high spots after the concrete has been placed to the desired thickness or screed to a true plane as determined by shooting strips or by the original concrete surface. Lightly apply cutting screeds, where used, to all surfaces so as not to disturb the concrete for an appreciable depth. Work in an upward direction when concrete is applied on vertical surfaces. Give the finished concrete a final flash coat of about 1/8 inches unless directed otherwise. Obtain a uniform appearance on all exposed surfaces unless otherwise shown on the plans. 3.7 Curing. Cure encasements with water for 4 days. Cure repairs and structural construction using either a piece of wet burlap taped over the repaired area with a covering of 4 mm minimum plastic sheet also taped in place or membrane curing as approved. Overlap the burlap with the plastic sheet and continuously tape the edges with a tape at least 3 inches wide, air duct tape or better, to completely enclose the mat and hold in moisture. Cure in this manner for 4 days. Curing is not required for soil nail walls unless walls are the final exposed surfaces, which in this case, cure at least 4 days in accordance with item 420, concrete substructures. Apply membrane curing in accordance with section 420.2.7, curing materials, for tunnel and ditch linings and vertical or overhead patches as approved. 3.8 Repair of defects. Repair or replace debonded areas as directed. 4 Measurement. Measurement of pneumatically placed concrete for encasement of structural members will be by the square foot of the actual contact area. Measurement of pneumatically placed concrete for repair of concrete structures will be by the cubic foot in place using the surface area times the average depth of the patch. When pneumatically placed concrete for repair of concrete structures is allowed or specified for item 429, concrete structure repair, measurement, and payment is in accordance with Article 429.5, Payment. 5 Payment. When pneumatically placed concrete is specified as a bid item, the work performed and materials furnished in accordance with this item and measured as provided under measurement will be paid for at the unit price bid for pneumatically placed concrete, encasement, or for pneumatically placed concrete, repair. This price is full compensation for cement, aggregate, water, and reinforcement, furnishing and installing steel anchors, removal of deteriorated or unsound concrete, mixing, placing, and curing pneumatically placed concrete, and equipment, labor, tools, and incidentals. Pneumatically placed concrete used for work other than encasement or repair will not be paid for directly but will be considered subsidiary to pertinent items.